Hello and welcome to the Salt City Gamescast. This is episode 148. My name is Nick Naylor. Sitting across from me is Jared Ellum.
Hey, good to see you, man.
I'm alive.
It's been a while.
You know, we've been doing this for many, many years, and I don't think I ever called in sick, and now twice in 2025. The second one, this most recent one, is far worse than the first one. I think I got a bad man cold. I don't know.
What?
I don't know. It's like
Bad man cold.
It's like a really bad one. It's
okay.
You know, it's I don't ever really get I hardly ever get sick. I sit over here and I marinate in it with my family. They get COVID. I don't ever get COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it gets me, my body's like, what the fuck do we do? It was not good. Jesus. I got sick, and maybe 4 days later, we were supposed to hang out and drink a bunch of booze.
Yeah.
Something I was really looking forward to because everyone that was coming over has way better collections than me. I canceled on that.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, my wife's like, you reschedule for the next weekend. And I was like, let's just make sure I'm feeling better. And spoilers, I wasn't better at all. This thing kicked my ass. My cough is somewhat under control. I apologize if it acts up during this show.
Yeah. You got your little lemon drink over there to hopefully coat the throat, as they say, to make it a little bit better.
I've never been so sober.
Yeah.
Never since you have known me have I been as sober as I am today. Because
I've known you a long time as well. So
there's just, I just can't think of a time where it was like 3 weeks for basically like one drink. And it's just like, it's not right.
I feel like a bit of a dick. We were talking before we started recording. I just brought this only 999 bottle in the world Springbank over, and I'm like, brought it over for you to drink, and you're like, I don't think I'm gonna have any of that. Like, okay, well, I'll just drink it by myself then.
You say 99 bottles in the world?
999 bottles. Yeah. So
it's
around
hot.
1,000 bottles of it. It's a Springbank 10 on Amontadillo sherry finish. So it's very sweet and nice. Obviously we're just still in the neck pour phase, so I can't really tell you exactly what I think of it, but it's a Springbank product. It's good.
Maybe you can bring it back next time. We can actually try it.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I definitely can do that. I'm sorry that you're feeling bad, man. That's never fun. I've actually been dodging the colds left and right, traveling and, just sitting next to people coughing up fucking lungs with no masks on, just, back to peak America. And I had this one guy that just thankfully it was a very short flight, but he got there late too. And he was in the middle seat, and they were closing the doors, and he fucking Home Alone ran into the fucking plane. And I'm like, God damn it. And then he coughed from takeoff to landing nonstop. And I'm just like, what am I supposed to do? Yep. If it was multiple hours, I probably would have been press the button. Can I move? This fucking guy is hacking up a lung over here. But because it was so short, I was just I'm just going to look like a giant asshole if I do that. So I'm just going to fucking stew in it and hope for the best. And thankfully I did not get sick, but I was very angry at the time. I was just I'm getting sick. It's just the way it goes. So
there's no way out of this.
Yeah. But thankfully I have not gotten sick. We'll see how it goes after hanging out with you for a few hours today.
If I'm still fucking contagious, 17 days later, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know how this works. I'm not a doctor, but Jesus.
Well, and we also delayed it because I was just look, man, I don't want you to force it. Let's just fucking get on the mend, you could have done what I have done in the past and just fucking raw dogged it, lay your head on the table, and then when it's for your time to talk, just come alive, reanimate from the dead and talk your points, and then go back.
It's a little more concerning now with the video component that we've added. So listen, we're here, and we've got there are more things that will ever fit into this show, because when we're still playing games even if we're not recording. So
played a lot of stuff in 20 days.
Seriously.
So we definitely are not going to be worried about content for the podcast.
So I was very excited. I've been looking forward to these new GPUs coming out. I was gonna do a new build, and I was there and ready.
Mhm.
And I knew when they were going on sale. I was looking at Best Buy and refreshing, and it was like coming soon, sold out. And it was like, well, that was the worst experience ever. Usually the website like breaks or something happens, but this time it was literally just a quarter of a second, and they were like, actually, they're all gone.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they had like one of each one, and from what I've heard is that the supply is basically non-existent. So that's a little bit of a bummer. I was talking to my wife about it today, and she's like, you're telling me there's no other graphics card that you can buy? And I was like, well, no, there actually isn't.
Mhm.
There's Otherwise, why am I rebuilding the computer?
Not
Like,
at this tier.
yeah, it's like what? She's just like, you're a ridiculous human being, and I was like, well, I will wait forever, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't see. No one is doing like what EVGA did, where they kind of had I forget what they called it, but you basically got in line.
Yeah.
And then it took a year, but they would eventually be like, your number's up. No
Now
one's
they
doing
don't
that.
make graphics cards anymore.
Literally, that was such a bad experience. They just fucking bounced.
Yeah. Do they make anything anymore?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe they make motherboards, and I have just purchased some power supplies from them.
Okay.
But I don't know what else. Like, people are like, EVGA, get it. But
yeah, you're certainly going to need a beefy power supply to run one of these GPUs effectively. They are power hungry cards. Obviously we are deep into the reviews of all of these things, and like honestly, it sucks that you can't get one because it's something that you want. But they're really not lighting the world on fire either.
well, that's the problem. Is a 4090, which is last generation's top dog, outperforms the new 5080.
Mhm.
So it's literally like, wait, or at least my position, I'm just like, well,
You got to get a 5090.
if I can't get a 5090, I'm not interested. So
Right.
I will just sit here and wait, and maybe it'll make it. So, I mean, usually I lose patience. And if I wait long enough, I'll just be like, well, maybe the next round of graphics cards
Yeah.
I'll get it on. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, there's been some weird stuff too. Like most people that benchmark all this stuff said like 20 to 30% improvement over the 4090 from the 5090. But then also like some random games that were performing below the 4090's capabilities. And a lot of that is probably going to be patched out through like driver updates and
Sure.
things like that. But yeah, not a great launch. When was the last time there's been like a good graphics card launch where everybody that could get one got one or wanted one could get one?
I got it was painful, but I was able to order a 1080 the
Yeah.
day it was announced, because I was on the message boards, and they had like the what's it called, the FE card, the anyway,
Founders Edition.
yes, the Founders Edition ones. But the people on the message boards were like, pump the brakes. All the third party guys aren't allowed to even tell you what they're doing until 9 o'clock. And I waited, and I got an EVGA one, and they showed them, and I was able to actually get a pre-order, get the thing right from launch. And ever since then, it's been shit.
Yeah. You need like a 1200 watt power supply to run this thing like comfortably with all the other components in your computer, which like I have one of those. So I'm like, cool. But also that's like complete fucking overkill. And it's insane that we're at this point. They have gotten smaller. I will say that, we were trending in this weird fucking direction where like the cards were just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And now we are seeing them slim down slightly, ever so slightly, which is promising. But
well, the cards barely fit into a mid-size ATX case. And it was just like, well, what the fuck? Everyone has to have a full-size monster? It's just like stupid.
Yeah. Just not super exciting. I was not in the market. I may be in the market for whatever the 60 series cards are whenever those come out in 2 or 3 years. But right now I just like with where developers are, allocating resources and development, we're so far ahead of the curve. You know what I mean? Still that it just like you can skip a couple generations and
for
be
sure.
all right.
For sure, especially with they all are developing towards the consoles, and even though there's Pro, the PS5, they're still developing towards that base model.
Right.
So then these things just crush it.
It
But
does feel good to be like, I'm running at 1,000 fucking frames a second though. And once you get that bug, it's hard to go back.
I wanted it for Monster Hunter, so I'm gonna be a little bummed. I still keep checking randomly, but it's just like, what are the odds that I'm gonna
You probably are gonna have to wait until like late spring, I would guess, for
maybe
the stock to normalize. But
yeah, and I went to eBay just to see, and it was $7,000, and I was like, what? $7,000?
Yeah,
like not like $2,500. 7,000 is the number that I guess someone's paying.
Good old capitalism, Nick.
Fucking crazy, dude.
Yeah, it's kind of fucking bonkers and nutty, man. But it's the world that we live in. But you can take solace in the fact that Nintendo is doing everything in their power to prevent scalpers from getting hold of the Switch 2. Which, look, maybe they've done all of the right things, and the supply will be great at launch. I am going to go out on a limb and say that it's going to be a dumpster fucking fire.
Probably. I don't know what the solution would be, but like, maybe if they just did something stupid, like it was like, hey, do you subscribe to Nintendo Online? You can pre-order the day before or something. Or like, you got a bunch of those gold fucking coins that you don't know what to do with on your purchases. That if you have 200 of them, you can pre-order. That would at least weed out some amount of like bots.
I have so many of those coins.
You can't. Yeah, I'll occasionally go and buy a bunch of fucking stickers or profile pictures.
Yeah.
Just like, what are we doing here?
Well, I mean, the logical answer to all of this is make a bunch of them. Make a surplus of them, which supposedly is what they were doing. But like, I'm just not buying it. I mean, just the materials that are required to make these kind of components, it's not like they're at a fucking surplus. So it's just tough. You know what I mean? Like, sure, I'm sure that the production is going to be higher than some of these GPUs, these cutting edge GPUs, which are much more, intensive process to make. But still, I'm sure it's going to be a shit show.
Probably.
I hope not, but I'm sure it will be.
And there's just going to be a lot of demand for that thing. I have a hard time. We need to see what they announce, but I'm pretty sure there's going to be an enormous amount of things sold immediately.
Yeah. Yep. I think it'll be an incredible little launch run for them, and I'm sure that they're going to sell fucking a shitload of units. So we shall see.
Looking forward to hearing about it. That's like the first week in April, I think, that they're going to tell us.
Yeah, I've been hearing a little bit more about that mouse functionality. Jeff Gertzman was talking about it, and he kind of like made it really appealing to me, where it's like you're playing kind of like a PC game in theory, but then you also have analog controls. So you've got like one Joy-Con that you're using analog and then a mouse. Could be really compelling for certain games like first-person shooters, Metroid, games like that, which you would much prefer to play those types of games with a mouse and keyboard if you had a choice. So
yeah, it would be it'd be interesting.
I didn't think about it like that. I thought it was just like kind of gimmicky and like stupid, but like the idea, the potential is there if they can implement it, and then it opens up a lot of really cool ideas for potential games.
And then like the obvious ones, Mario Maker, games like Civ. We'll talk about Civ probably on the next show.
Yep,
I've been playing that a little bit, but you've been playing Dynasty Warriors.
I haven't for 2 weeks. I have not been playing Dynasty Warriors Origins.
That's the name of this whole show, actually, is games that we finished weeks ago.
Yeah. No, Dynasty Warrior Origins. Yeah, I played it and finished it and have moved on to like 3 other things since then. But let's talk about it because I think it's worth talking about.
How long is that game?
Origins?
Yeah, to finish one of those things.
To finish this one, you're looking at 50 or 60 hours.
Oh, wow.
If you are like really into the experience, like really, really into it, you probably eke out 200 hours of content. There's a lot here.
Oh.
Yeah. There is a lot to do in this game. So yeah, this is kind of it's a Musu game. Muso. I don't know how to pronounce that. I never have been able to. But you know what I'm talking about. It's a long running series, obviously. And I think that like diehard fans, well, I am not one of them. Back when I was like 12, 13, I played a lot of Dynasty Warriors back on the PS2.
Wasn't that where
that's where
first
it started.
showed up? And I remember it was always very flashy because at that time, PS2 era, you were just it was fucking awesome looking. You're fighting so many enemies.
Yeah, yeah. It definitely has got a lot of like the trappings of those old school games. So, if you're not a fan of that repetitive kind of gameplay that these things are known for, like this is probably not for you because that is what this game is. But I do think that they evolve it and move it forward in some pretty tangible ways. And I also think that it's probably, I think this is like not a controversial statement, probably the best Dynasty Warrior game that exists.
That's ever been made.
Yes. So the real big thing here, like in comparison to older games, is a lot of the games kind of functioned around like pick a character from one of these many generals from the Romancing of the Three Kingdoms story, which is feudal China for anybody that doesn't know. Pick one of them and then go and kick the shit out of a bunch of people, and you're going to see the story through the lens of the character that you choose. And then you'll find other characters in the environments as you progress the game, and you're going to beat the shit out of those characters. And once you do, then you can go back and play as those characters. Rinse and repeat, right? And really the variety and like the variation came from like the different move sets that the characters had. But from my opinion and my perspective, all of the combat in those games was like fairly shallow, and like it was compounded on that like you're going from like area to area fighting these like giant groups of enemies and just mowing them all down.
Just button mashing, right?
Button mashing, and then it's like okay, but then the move set that each character had was somewhat limited, where it just didn't feel like up to snuff with like other similar action games in the genre, right? So that's where this series kind of lost me after like 2 or 3 games on the PS2. With this one, there is like a large overarching story, and you play as this silent protagonist that is not a historical figure. He's just a dude that just shows up in fucking feudal China and has got all these wacky fucking powers, right? And so you are essentially interacting with like the different main historical figures from this time period, and getting into fucking fights with them. And so, going back to what I was saying, like previous games, each character had like, this guy uses a staff. This guy uses a sword. This girl uses fucking tambourines for some reason. Well, I don't know why, but I didn't know that tambourines were as effective at killing a man as they are. But apparently,
usually when I hear someone playing the tambourines, I'm like, what if you didn't do that? What if you stopped? Yeah. Like immediately. Yeah. I will kill you if you don't stop.
But that's kind of how it worked. With this, it's like the game starts and it's like, okay, you have, I think, 1 or 2 weapons that you can pick from, right? And throughout the duration of the game, you get 10 weapons that you can choose from that all fit different archetypes. And then a 11th weapon unlocks when you finish the game. And what is really compelling about this experience is that moveset is drastically revamped. So while it is by default, I mean, because of the amount of enemies that you're fighting in a given time, it is button mashy, but there is a lot of mechanical depth for every single weapon, and every single weapon functions drastically different from one another. So you really kind of find one that you like. And you would say, well, like in most games, you're going to stick with that weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Does not work that way in this. If you want to progress your character and level up the character, right?
You need to switch weapons.
Yes. So each weapon in the game, you have like basic, I don't know, missions to kind of complete. So it's like, take out X amount of enemies with this weapon, do this move X amount of times, et cetera, et cetera. And there's this pretty robust list per weapon. And as you kind of complete those objectives, you get experience points that then level up your character's abilities and unlocks skill trees. There are 7 skill trees in the game, and they're huge. So if you want to progress the story, you kind of have to switch weapons, because there are 8 levels per weapon. So, and once you get to like the latter part of the level with a given weapon, like 6 to 8 takes a long ass time to level up. Right. So it's like, you kind of are faced with a situation where you're like, okay, well, I guess I could just grind out this weapon. But I'm not going to be progressing other avenues of my character, and I'm just gonna kind of be hurting myself in the long run. So
Unless you're gonna play it for 200 hours, like you.
yeah, for sure. But like if you're just trying to get through the story, you absolutely need to switch. But thankfully, I don't want to go as far as like Monster Hunter level of depth where it just feels like you're playing a completely different game from one weapon to another. But there is enough depth here where you're like, okay, this feels drastically different, right? And I actually really enjoyed my time kind of messing around with the different weapons and kind of tweaking and fucking around with them. Obviously, you can buy different weapons in a specific weapons category that are going to level up its stats and things like that, or you'll find them on the battlefield as well, in certain cases. And so that's basically the loop of the game. But in addition to all of what I just said, there is like a pretty robust open world map that functions very similarly to like what's the Total War, where you kind of got like this map that's condensed and the characters are really large and you kind of move around the map freely, and that allows you to interact with different characters in different parts of the map that are
Shows you your
rulers.
territories and all
Yeah,
that stuff.
exactly. But at the beginning of the game, you're kind of just like, I'm here for everyone. Like I don't have an agenda here. I just want to know what you're about, and I want to know what you're about, and I want to know what you're about. There's 3 main factions in the game, and they're all warring against each other. We're 3 kingdoms, Romance of the 3 Kingdoms. And so at the beginning of the game, it's kind of disjointed from a story perspective because nameless protagonist guy just shows up and you're like, I'm going to hang out with Yubei this time and kick the shit out of Sao Sao. And then it's like, now I'm going to go over to Sao Sao and be like, what's up, bro? I just murdered a bunch of your people, but like, can I hang out with you and do some fucking fighting for you?
I'll do some murdering for you too.
Yeah. And it's very strange early on, but I from a gameplay perspective, if you kind of like set aside how ridiculous it is, if you were to think about it from like a realistic perspective, it gives you.
I just came from Germany, and you wouldn't believe the things they're doing over there.
Yeah,
what are you all about?
Yeah, it's very interesting. But then like you get to a point in the story where it's like, okay, you've seen what everybody has to offer, and now you have to pick a side to side with, right? And at that point in time, the game tells you like, look, once you go to this point, like there's no going back. And then you pick your general that you want to stick with. And then from that point on, which I think is like, there's 5 main chapters in the game. And I think that choice takes place in chapter 3, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a long time since I played it, so I can't quite remember. But at any rate, you are then forced to kind of stick with that faction. You're fighting the other 2 factions, and it works really well. I mean, I think
so people would replay it to do the other factions potentially.
Well, that's the thing that's really cool about this is that you get to an end game once you finish the story, and then you can basically go back to certain stories, plot points in the game and change your decisions while retaining all of your abilities, items, progression, right?
So you don't have to go redo those.
No, you don't have to do like chapter 1 through 2 to kind of like figure out different motivations for the different characters. So it really works well from that perspective, where you can just go back and be like, let's side with these fucks and see how things shake out, right? From a technical perspective, I think we've finally hit it. And I think that this is one of the reasons why I think this thing is so compelling is, yes, like on the PlayStation 2 at the time, you'd get into these environments and be like, there's a shitload of dudes on the screen. It is like tenfold here, where they're literally rendering thousands upon thousands upon thousands of fucking soldiers at any given time. Not the entire game, that'd be a little too much, but there are obviously segments where it's like confined and there's like less enemies, maybe like 20 or 30 on the screen. But then there are points in the story missions where it's like there are thousands of you. And it is a very like empowering situation where you ride your fucking horse into like a giant army of thousands of men, jump in the air, and then like ground pound them, and they all like fly in the air. Is it disorienting and confusing? Absolutely. Does it get a little too much where you're like, I don't know where I'm at? Yes. And like, the way that these games function is like you have cannon fodder enemies that are just like you hit them a couple times, they're dead, but then they have a commanding officer, right? And really there's a map in the top right corner of the screen. And as you kind of like whittle away the forces, your forces are represented by blue and the enemy is represented by red. And as you're looking at that map, that mini map in the corner, you'll see, okay, this area is full of red. So, and sometimes like there are different like criteria for success in each mission, but it's more or less like, I'm going to go take this base that's controlled by a bunch of these peons and then one or two generals. And they actually are challenging. And like, you got to fight them and beat the shit out of them. Once you kill all of them, the main generals, once you kill them, the like peon enemies kind of lose their morale and they just run away. Like, nice. Run away. They put their weapons down and then you can take that territory, right? So that's kind of how the game functions. One thing that I think is great about this thing is there's a pretty robust parry system here that works really well. This is Team Ninja, obviously, and W Omega Force, or whatever the fuck the name of the studio is that's been doing this forever. And I think that they've taken some of the trappings that they've found with like Neo and some of the other Rise of the Ronin, like all these games in the Souls format, and injected some of that depth of combat into this. And this game is not easy, but it's not particularly challenging either. I think it strikes like a nice balance of difficult and just like you're kind of cruising as well. I think it works. I think it really works. One of the things I think a lot of like diehard fans might have criticized is like nameless protagonist is just nameless protagonist. And he's fucking not super. I mean, he's just a silent, like, super soldier, basically.
Genocide creator.
Yeah. Like just murders thousands of people on a Tuesday. And then it's just like, oh, well, I guess I'll do it again tomorrow. But like, you know, a lot of people really like that historical, like I'm playing as Guan Yu, who is like a major player in this story, right? And I think what they've done smartly is you get to a certain point, you fill up a gauge in certain missions where at the beginning, when you're like, you know, formulating a strategy before you go into battle, you can pick through like a number of characters that are going to accompany you.
Your super or something.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. But then once you fill that gauge, you can switch to them. And then they have unique skill set and unique abilities that you can use. So you're not just using this random fucking character that they just created out of nowhere. You're also using the historical characters from previous games. So I think it strikes a nice balance from that perspective. And yeah, man, I think this thing's pretty sweet. I think, you know, I'm good for probably another decade of Dynasty Warriors games. But, you know, people really like this thing. It reviewed pretty well. And so I was just like, you know, there's not much going on. I think this is the first 2025 game that we've talked about on the podcast.
I think so. How long are these missions? So 10 minutes?
It depends. Yeah, like that's one criticism that I do have. Like some of the mission structure, like any of these games sucks, where it's just like, this chick's fucking got to get out of here on her horse and you got to fucking, you know, escort her. There's escort missions and things like that where I'm just like, oh my God, this is annoying. And a lot of times the strategy, like there's a clear cut win condition, and the general will tell you like, this is what's got to happen. But then they'll come to you, nameless guy, and they're just like, you can just do whatever you want. And I'm like, why can't I have like a purpose? Like, can't you give me something specifically to do? And it's just like float around, and if you see a problem, take care of it. You know,
I've seen your work.
Yeah, yeah. And some of that leads to some mission failures, at least before like I truly understood. Like the game is like obnoxious about telling you like, fucking Wang Li is fucking in trouble. You got to get over there. And it will just like beat you over the head with it. Like, granted, you can turn down the notifications, but like you kind of want them because like depending on who's getting the shit kicked out of them, like you could fail the mission based on that. But the problem is sometimes Wang Li is fucking on the other side of the map, and then you got to waltz your happy ass across the entire map to go save his dumb ass. And so it just gets like kind of frustrating from that perspective. Like kind of antiquated like mission structure. They're not reinventing the wheel with some of this stuff, but I don't know if they necessarily have to. I think that people that are diehard fans of this series kind of want and expect a lot of this stuff to be here. But I do give them credit for kind of evolving the format and pushing it forward in some tangible ways. I think that there are certain things that they could do better in the future. But overall, I think this is a pretty good time if you are a fan of Tecmo Koei like games and can stomach some of the repetitive nature.
Story's not anything, right? Like
I mean, it's just the Romance of the Three Kingdoms story. So it's a good story, but it's been told 1,000 times. And, you know, I mean, it is a critical part of Chinese history. And for me in particular, like I got onto the Dynasty Warriors train after playing Kessen, which is and Nobunaga's Ambition and Romancing of the Three Kingdoms, which are three different titles from Tecmo Koei back in the day. And they were all more strategy based. And that was, I think, specifically Romance of the Three Kingdoms, which that first one came out on like the original NES in Japan. So it's a long running series. But there's basically just spinoffs of that where they were like, what if we just get rid of all of the strategy and it's just balls to the wall action game? So yeah, it's a good story, but the way that the nameless protagonist kind of interjects himself into this thing, I am not the biggest fan of. He's just fucking this dude that was in a village that was an orphan, of course, and he's got amnesia, so of course he does. And
that's required.
Yeah, and nobody knows why he's so good with fucking all these weapons, but he sure is good.
No one in that country can remember fucking anything.
Yeah. And then it's just like, okay, well, fine, I guess. But yeah, like the core of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms story is compelling, and there is a lot of dialogue here. Some of the voice acting is absolutely atrocious.
Nice.
Probably turn it to Chinese, you know, because some of the English voice acting, it's like, you want a bowl of soup and some fucking, you know, a place to stay for a couple of days? Sure, come on in, Gary and fucking Bi Guan Yu. It's just very not up to the standard of like modern voice acting in a video game. But, you know, it is what it is. I think this is a good, solid game. I'd give it like probably an 8. I think it's worth it. And again, if you are fucking really into this shit, there is a lot to sink your teeth into here. There is a expanded difficulty once you finish the game. Then you can work on, you know, finalizing your skill trees, which, like I said, 6 or 7 skill trees with in each skill tree, probably 20 to 25 abilities that are just going to further improve your character.
I wouldn't think this game would be very difficult, like anything too crazy.
Well, I didn't try the harder difficulty.
Well, but the base difficulty, I would.
Some of it is yeah, there are moments that are somewhat challenging, but overall, no, it's not.
You cruise through it.
It's not super difficult. Yeah, I put 40 or 50 hours into it and put a bow on it and moved on to like 6 other things since then.
Well, so I had heard kind of at the end of the year, I was listening to a bunch of end of year podcast stuff, people talking about their favorite games, and people kept talking about this game called Mouthwashing, about kind of the narrative. I was like, all right, whatever. And it's only a few hours long, so I was like, oh, we'll fucking give it a go. So I'm not nearly as high on it as all the podcasts I listen to, but I think it's somewhat weird and interesting. It basically you're on this ship, and you guys are basically just transporting some goods. You don't know what those goods are, and generally this is a pretty much, I guess you can call it a walking simulator. There's not a whole lot that you're doing besides just doing some minor interactions and getting more of the story. But I guess there will probably be spoilers through this thing, so if you don't want to be spoiled,
Kind of hard not to talk about this thing without spoiling.
Go spend 3 hours and just finish the game. But the game starts out and the ship crashes essentially. It hits an asteroid or something. And so then it starts to go through the aftermath of that, and you're kind of learning about how all the characters are doing, and then it does some flashbacks to show you how you get to how they all came together and things like that. And it's a pretty fucked up story overall. Like and there's a lot of psychedelic kind of seeing things, and some of that is kind of explained because they do finally go into they're like, well, we're gonna die, we don't have enough food, and it's a very shitty corporate ship that they're on. Like, they are allowed to have one birthday party, not for everyone. They just have one birthday party while they're on this thing, and they like make this shitty ass cake, and they're all just, I don't know. I found some of that stuff amusing. I guess the coffee machine I think goes out of coffee pretty quickly, but it's just it seems like a terrible time and a terrible world. Maybe where we're heading, who knows? But anyway, they go and find out what they're transporting, because they're like, well, what if it's food? Maybe we're gonna be totally fine, and it's nothing but mouthwash, which is pretty funny, because from that point forward, everyone really starts to lose their sanity, because they're running out of food and they're getting drunk off mouthwash, from what I can tell.
Yeah.
And that part of it is pretty amusing. I thought it was quite funny, except that it really takes some turns with the story where you're just like, there's a rape story. Okay, all right, that's something. But you basically are playing as a character who's a piece of shit, and by the end of the game, you realize that this dude is a degenerate and caused all these problems.
He crashed the ship
because
he didn't want to face the consequences of his actions.
Had raped one crew member
and impregnated her. Yeah,
and it was just like, at the end of it, I was just like, this thing's interesting, but I don't know if I like it very much.
I don't hate it. I thought that it was interesting for what it was. This thing is not very long, 2-3 hours to get through.
Longer.
Yeah,
like, you would be.
There are some cool moments. I think that the characters are all interesting for the most part. But yeah, there's some like strange stuff here where like the captain gets like brutally injured, and he's basically like a vegetable on this fucking gurney in the med bay, and you've got to like feed him pills and shit like that.
Open his mouth.
Yeah, you gotta like click right click or left click to open his mouth. It's just really tough to kind of get through some of it. And yeah, it's incredibly dystopic. This, evil corporation whose mascot is this like cute little pony, which is pretty funny. And the pony is like kind of all over the ship, like propaganda, more or less. There's also like a giant like statue that's got like a speaker in it that talks through the game, which is unsettling.
With corporate speak.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think it takes a turn when they do go into the cargo hold, and it's just like this massive amount of mouthwash. And I laughed pretty hard when the older guy got all fucking lit on mouthwash, and he's like dancing in the lounge, just drunk as fuck. And everybody's like, we got to do something about him. He's kind of losing the plot, and he's just fucking like hammered. He's got like, I think he's got like a fucking party hat on, just like dancing, drunk as a skunk on mouthwash. But it does take a pretty dark turn, and the character you are playing as is an absolute piece of shit that caused all of these problems. They lose their job halfway through, and that's like kind of the catalyst that starts the downfall of all of this. And just like the desperation that is kind of explained by the characters is really pretty grim. Like one of the female characters, she's just like, so crestfallen and depressed that she's losing her job because she doesn't have any savings, and like it's really pretty fucking grim to the point where she considers offing herself. And so it is not a happy go lucky fun game.
Well, at one point I thought like, well, they found the one cryopod thing, so one person can be frozen and saved essentially.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, obviously that poor lady that was raped and is pregnant, she's gonna be saved. Nope, she commits suicide. Nope, the person that gets saved is this captain who
Curly.
really has very little quality of life prospects in his future, and he's the one that gets frozen in there. And it's like, oh no.
Yeah, yeah, and then it also definitely teeters on like psychedelic, and I think this is one of those games where you can kind of like apply a lot of different of like theory crafting logic to this and just kind of assume what is happening, but it's not like directly explained.
Yeah.
But there is like some sequences where like one sequence in particular where you're in like the cargo hold where all the mouthwash is being stored, and there's this giant like ethereal horse that will come after you and try to kill you. And I think like most of that is, my guess is like chalked up to they're all drinking this mouthwash and losing their minds.
And that sequence was like a stealth section.
Yeah, it kind of sucked.
And for a game that's only 3 hours, that section was at least 5 hours long. I was like, this has got to stop.
It took me a while to figure out what I had to do, and then I just realized you had to Jeff Goldblum it and not move like a Tyrannosaurus. Like,
exactly.
If you don't move, the giant horse can't see you and will move on. But if you move, then it will kill you.
And then there's another scene where you randomly get a gun, and that was a bad time too. I didn't really think any of that.
The old guy's chasing you through like a cemetery, and you've got a fucking, he like sneaks up on you like he's the sneakiest individual ever, because you're just like, I don't understand how you keep on sneaking up behind me, but then you got to shoot him really quickly. Yeah, I don't know. I read some stuff about this after I played it, and no shade against anybody that really enjoys this thing. I just feel like small, slice games like this, there are better examples of it, namely like Indica, for instance. Games like that I think resonated with me more, were more enjoyable overall, and this thing just kind of fell short for me.
Same, pretty much the same. All right, we're gonna talk about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, but we're gonna take a break first, and then we'll get into it. Okay, we are back. Had a little bit of a break, after the holidays. Had time to kind of clean some stuff up. I'd wanted to finish Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and I managed to do it. But first off, I experimented with an app called Chiaki, Chiaki.
Sounds very familiar.
But it's on for the Steam Deck. And it allows me to stream from the PS5 to the Steam Deck. And I was like, when I've done this in the past, it's been a terrible time, but I'll give it a shot. I did hardwire the PlayStation in, but
what do you mean hardwire to the Steam Deck?
No, I'm
hardwire through the
PlayStation 5 was not on Wi-Fi.
Got it.
So, and I have I have fast internet, but holy shit, couldn't even tell the difference, which is pretty impressive because I just tried to do the same thing from Steam to the Steam Deck, and absolutely not acceptable. So I don't know what is going on with this app and the PlayStation 5, but that was really, it kind of opened a lot of doors, because I end up using the Steam Deck a lot of times in bed, so having that able to link up to the PS5, and really like the fidelity is awesome, because it looks way better than what the Steam Deck would be able to run it natively, which obviously, well, I guess Final Fantasy VII is now on Steam, but it looked really fucking good. So I was like, well, this is a great solution, which is why I tried to then stream from Steam to the Steam Deck, but it no dice. I had quite a bit of latency when I tried that the other day. So I finished it, and I got some issues. Let's start with, obviously, we've talked about this before. You've talked about it multiple times. The game looks great. It's a big AAA game.
As big as it could be.
Yes, it sure. Yep. Yeah, the music's fantastic. The thing looks awesome. The combat system in the game is really, really good. I don't know if I'll be a little over it by the next one. I don't know if I'd want to see it change a little bit, but either way, like that combat system is a lot of fun to play.
I think that what it really boils down to, and granted they're running out of characters, but having Sid and Vincent presumably playable in the next one, with potential of maybe there being like some sort of Vincent DLC in between, much like what the UV DLC was.
They weren't going to do it. I thought I saw someone say from the development team that they weren't going to do that.
Yeah. At any rate, like, I think that that's really what it is. But those are the only two characters that are missing, unless they go off the rails, which is a huge possibility, and add, a couple more playable characters like Zach and a few more. So
for sure. So, I mean, all that is good. It's got so much that is great. And I think, and obviously you love the game, and a lot of people really like the game, but there are some things about this game that I really don't like. The open world, navigating the open world, the way it gets into this loop where it introduces you to a new place. There's fucking a lot of shit to do at each one of these new places. And you've got to find these, like, they'll get on your map, there's a tower, and you're just like, I need to get there. I found myself extremely frustrated trying to get to some of these places. And there's always some new chocobo fucking hook. Some chocobos here, climb walls. Chocobos here, hover over water for a reason I don't fully understand, but that's what they do. And like every area has a new hook, and they're
like different like subspecies of chocobo, right?
Yeah, well, what's the water one doing, Jared?
I don't know.
How is he hovering?
I don't know. Where is that? I can't remember what area that's in.
It's the last one before the ocean. And these.
Oh, that's Cosmo.
Yeah.
I really love those mini games where you had to like float through the points. I did all of those, and like I spent probably 10 hours because they are really kind of annoying and hard, but I had a good time doing that.
So I guess I wanted to start there because the open world frustrated me in a way that it might not frustrate everybody. Some people might have a lot of nostalgia for the game and be like, I'm in this amazing place. Look, it's awesome. And I don't necessarily have that. But I was irritated as I'm trying to check all these boxes to find all these places. And on top of that, I don't think that a lot of what you're doing is very redeemable in a lot of the repeatable stuff in the different areas. The Moogle Village, fuck that. Nope.
Yeah, that's not fun.
And it's in, I believe, every town, right? And you have to like corral these Moogles into this little thing.
It gets harder and harder.
And it's actually quite difficult. I mean, it's not easy.
Mm-hmm. I did it all.
And I did it all too. It's not, I don't think it's good, right? And it's time that you have to spend doing it. The stealth chocobos, where you gotta like do this stupid fucking to get the new chocobo in each area. There's a stealth mission area mini game, and I don't think that is any good.
I like that. Why? Because I just think that it's charming and interesting, and I don't know, like it is a unique gameplay hook, right? You saying that you don't like it is completely valid, but like that feeds into why I like this game so much, is there's so much variety, and some of it's bad, some of it's good. Yeah. And where you fall on that is really going to determine how much you like the game.
I think if you don't buy into being so excited to be doing almost anything in the world, that it's just a hard sell for some of these things.
Some of it is better than others. Like some of the mini games, like there's a lot of mini games in this game.
At least 1,000.
Some people call it Final Fantasy VII mini game. There's a lot of it, but I appreciated the variation, and the amount of different activities that you have available to you, right? And yes, like the one that like this the stealth chocobo one, not my favorite, but I also didn't hate it. There were I think the last one really frustrated me. There was one in particular that was really hard.
You were up above and you were guiding a chocobo, and these flowers or something were growing, and then you had to like guide it with you were throwing bait down there.
They're like cactuses that pop up. Yeah, that one was frustrating. But yeah, like I get it. I totally understand. Like some people may be like, I hate these mini games, and I think that they're just like tacked on annoyances to me, and I don't want to do them. For me, I think it's one of the game's strengths because it's just so varied and there's just so much content here, things to mess around with, right?
And I think that's going to be the biggest difference between us, and why I'm kind of so mad at the game, because it's not short.
Oh, it's super long.
I'm not talking so like when you're over here saying like I really like this stuff, the game is 100 and something hours.
It's gonna be like 130 hours to finish it.
You're like, great. And I'm like, well, I don't really like all this stuff, and it's still the same length of game. So this is really quite the predicament. And it's a game that there was never going to be a scenario where I did not finish the game. I had to finish the game in my brain because I want to play the next one. Like, just I want to understand all this stuff, and it's really not possible for me to say I'm going to skip it. I'm in there. You get to a new open world area. Let's mainline directly to the next quest. Like, I'm just broken in a way that like you get stuff from all those quests. You get better, and if you like the combat, like you kind of want to do some of that shit. There's reasons to do it.
You kind of want to do it all.
Yeah,
all of it. If you're me. And you, so,
I did. I think I'm at 110 hours, so I did not do everything, but I did a lot, and I felt like I did most of the things. Right, Queen's Blood, that thing's fucking great. That is a fun ass game. I really like to play that game.
Did you get all the cards?
Yeah. No, I don't know if I got all the cards, but I like finished and I believe I fought everyone I could possibly find to fight, but there maybe is a store or something where I didn't buy a card.
I really like the story surrounding Queen's Blood. Like, it's hokey and stupid.
It's funny,
but it's like, it's pretty good. Just like how much detail there is in that whole thing. Like, it goes places where you're like, I'm fighting the god of Queen's Blood, and it's just like, what the fuck is happening?
You can't just have a card game. It has to have the sub narrative. It's pretty ridiculous, but
the quality of the card game itself is excellent as well.
For sure.
If you are getting me to go and like use a secondary like application on my computer to build decks like as effectively as possible, you're doing something right with your card game. And just, I fucking love that shit so much. I love card games in general. So fucking, yeah, absolutely.
And there are some crazy decks you can build, because I was screwing around. I was just like, all right, well, how do I fucking win? How do I, I want to make the deck. And you can make some really unique things that my brain would not come up with without really spending a lot of time.
Yeah, the challenges at the beach resort, some of those later challenges
where you don't use your own deck, you use the pre-made decks.
Yes, and you've got to do very specific things. Those are fucking tough. Some of them, like, I'm not gonna lie, I couldn't figure out, and I just went online and was like, "What do I need to do? Because I need this card that it gives, that I get if I finish this." But yeah,
there's a lot of things in the game that are quite hard.
The game's hard.
The piano mini game is fucking hard.
Dude.
I can't max out the full tier on all those.
No, like, I'm so bad at rhythm games. It's not even funny. That might be puzzle games and rhythm games are like the two genres that I am worst at.
You were not a big Rock Band Guitar Hero guy.
I was bad at it though. Everybody was like, when Rock Band came out, they were like, Jared, I don't know, you can play the bass. Yeah. Like, we're gonna play the harder instruments. I'm just terrible at rhythm games. I always have. I have no rhythm at all. I wish I did, but I don't. And then like Rhythm Final Fantasy, the newest release that's come out for that series, people love that thing. And I bought it and I played it with my nephew. And that's one game that he just kicked the shit out of me. Like,
great.
just kick the living shit out of me. That game is fantastic too. If you're a fan of Final Fantasy music, really good. But goddamn, like, he's like, it's not that hard. And I'm like, you're 12. You're 35. How are you so much better at this than me?
Quick sidebar. We were at, it was before I had met you, but most people there. I was at a party, and that was during the Rock Band era.
Yeah.
And we were just handing there was a lot of people at this party, but we were just
handing the axe around.
Handing it around. And this girl that did not look like a nerd or anything. This is like, just obviously, of course, this happens. And she plays that, what is the Into the Flames or whatever that fucking,
like Dragon Force. The Fire and
so
Flames.
She's like, can I try? And she does it. And she had done her homework, had fucking played it, and everyone was just like, oh, it was absolutely one of the cooler things I've ever seen with Rock Band.
That era was epic, dude. Like, it was hokey. Like, we've got a bunch of plastic instruments, but man,
real dumb.
Never gonna happen again.
Yeah, I think that's probably enough for the open world stuff. It just didn't jive with me. Like, I don't like the towers. I just don't like.
I didn't like the towers either.
I'm just like, really, you did towers?
I agree. I agree with you there.
Are you fucking kidding me? You did towers?
I totally agree with you. Completely unnecessary, just lazy. But I will say that there's not a lot of towers. You know, you do a few towers, and you pretty much unlocked everything, and then you can go and explore. But like, yeah, you don't need towers. Like, that is.
I just can't believe that was what they came up with.
That's as antiquated as plastic guitars in 2024 when this game came out.
Like, you guys have handmade all this creative shit, and then you were like, you know who did it right? Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Well, the same thing with fucking Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, man. It's just like, granted, I think that specifically Tears of the Kingdom does it the best because it's like, there's a hook with all of these. And I guess Horizon does a good job with that too, with some of the towers and like
robot dinosaurs. I don't know what they're called.
Yeah, some of that's unique enough where you're just like, I'm gonna jump into a hay bale after this from fucking 120 feet, and that's just the way physics works. And gravity, I'll be fine. But like, please stop it, stop it. Like MJ meme, like, stop it, get help, like, fucking do something better. Yeah, like we can fucking come up with something better than the tower mechanic. I completely agree with you.
There are things I like about this plenty, but I'm basically going through the things that bug me. A lot of the bosses, I like fighting Rude 10 times as much as the next guy, but like, one, this motherfucker is a known offender. Someone's got to kill him. Like, if you fight him multiple times in the first one, and then like around the third time you fight him in the second one, I'm just like, Jesus Christ! Like,
yeah.
Also, why are you so confident, Rude? I've kicked your ass 9 times. Where are you getting the confidence? Like, I beat your ass.
This is just JRPGs. What game were we talking about where it's just like, it was last year we were talking about a game where I'm like, I fought this guy fucking 6 times. Oh no, it was East Nordics, where it's just like, what are we doing? Fucking let's kill him already. Like, I don't like that either, but that just seems like a JRPG trend where and Dragon Age, the Veilguard does it as well. So it's not all JRPGs, but yeah, that's a mechanic that needs to go. Like, give me unique boss fights or boss encounters.
Like 10 hours go by and he's like, you'll never get past me. Why would you think I wouldn't get past you? What in our previous experience would make you think you're going to win?
The last fight in the Colosseum against Rude is actually pretty good, I would say. I would argue that.
Is that, and then it ends where you fight Rufus? Is that
yeah.
That Rufus fight was tough. You had to the game does this occasionally where it's like, you need to engage with fucking everything to kind of get through Rufus. You have to be able to switch to that I forget what it's called, but that one that you can parry a lot, Punisher mode or something like
what
that.
Was your team comp?
So I got a little, I didn't like how often it was switching, so I ended up kind of Googling like who's the fucking best, like, how do I need to get through this game. So Tifa, Barrett, Cloud.
Okay.
Was what if I could choose.
Yeah. So that was pretty much mine. I did that organically though. I think Barrett's the best character in the game. In particular, some of his abilities are just so fucking devastating and almost required in some of the harder difficulty challenges.
Well, there's flying characters, and if you're Cloud, it kind of gets real fucking tough to do much if you don't have any gauge. So that can get a little frustrating where you've got to switch over to.
I also think that Barrett is. I mean, obviously he's a big tanking bruiser, but some of his kit is really satisfying to use. The only character, and I did use Yuffie a lot because I mean Yuffie is the most fun character to play in the game. But Aerith as well. I used Aerith a shitload in this game, specifically for some of her AoE abilities. Some of the kind of like I build up this area effect around me and then charge this fucking attack that just you get like these funnels or like orbs around you that just rain down damage onto enemies, which is really effective. But so I'm on the same page.
It was a little
Yuffie, Aerith, Cloud, Barrett. Those were the characters I played the most.
I wish they could tweak the combat a little bit where if you switch to a character, it almost immediately aggroes to that character. Like I'll be Cloud, I'll switch to Aerith, and immediately like someone is charging at me. And I know that there are abilities that you can use as like Barrett to pull aggro, but it is a little frustrating where it's just like I see a fucking heal and I'm like a mile away and this dude's just like, what? Get her!
Yeah.
And runs all the way across. It's just hard because you need to charge ATB gauge, and these motherfuckers don't do much when you're not controlling them. They kind of just sit around and stare at the ground, and you'd have to rebalance the game because everyone's really powerful. So if they were doing as much as you're doing, you would murder everyone and you got to rebalance it. But there's times when I'm just like, I've charged my ATB gauge like 3 times, Aerith. What's the goal? What are you doing over there?
I was actually thinking while I was playing through, like if they could implement some sort of multiplayer component with this, it could be potentially really compelling.
For sure.
You know, up the difficulty of the encounters even more, and then have 3 player characters.
Lose the slow motion thing, but you would still, if you were just only playing as one character, you could probably do that pretty well.
It would be pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, I agree. That would be fun.
There's a lot of synergy in this game, in the combat system, in terms of like what you're doing with one character switching to the next character, and then all of those abilities kind of cascading and being really effective. So that could be cool.
Yep. I get a little irritated because there is a big cast of characters and you get all your shit set and you're like all the materials where it needs to be, and then it will force you into a certain party and you're like, oh, I never fucking used Red 13. Now I gotta give them something. And I wish it was, I don't know how to make it different because you want to keep upgrading the same materia kind of, but then there's times where you're like, all right, I got to go pull half of what fucking Barrett has to get to him and then recalibrate. And maybe if they had like saved ways to save and just click a button and be like, hey, I want Barrett to have this shit, save it, and then click the button later and say load up. Like,
yeah, I agree with that. It's kind of tedious, but also it's largely mitigated when you get deeper and deeper into the harder content because you just know which materia is good, and it's really not that cumbersome to just be like, well, I know that this is the materia that I need to switch over because this is really the only viable materia that I can use to have success.
Yeah. I think the last thing I didn't like is well, I don't think the game's paced very well as we get into story because of this, how huge it is. It's like, and I don't particularly like, there are good narrative beats in this game, but then there are some pretty big stretches where it's just like, this chapter is going to be Red 13's dungeon and you have to use him. And it's kind of a 1v1, or maybe you have one other person with you for a little while. And I did not like his chapter. And then the next chapter was Kate Sith's. I did not like Kate Sith's chapter. So that's really kind of the last couple chapters before the final 2 that are really story heavy. So I had an issue where I was just like, I don't like this shit. And you're making me use these people. and I didn't think it was very good. I'm fine with the ending on this thing. The last 2 chapters that really go big time story off the rails. Who the fuck knows what's going on? I'm fine with all that. It's weird, and then they're out there, and you got to go read a lot after once you finish the game, and you're like, all right, what exactly is how many timelines are there in this game? And I don't know if they're gonna be able to pull it all together, but we will see.
It doesn't matter if they're going to be able to pull it all together. That's fucking Nomura, man. It does not matter. Look, we have seen the blueprint in Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah.
Okay, this is Nomura. You know, they're all going to show up with 17 belts in the next game. You had 1 or 2 belts, and now the gloves are off, and Nomura has got carte blanche to just give them all 17 belts. It is an interesting way to handle it, and I think ultimately, I think it's the right way. If you're going to redo a game, the game that exists from 1996 is the game that exists. Yeah. And that game is always there, right? So I think that if you just do a retelling, minute to minute retelling of the original source material, it does not land. It does not get people talking like doing what they're doing with it now. You know, we saw it in remake, and we've seen it very much so in Rebirth, where there are a lot of differences, specifically at the end of the game, where you're just like, oh my God, what the fuck is happening? And also like, Aerith's gone, but she's not gone, and that's confusing, and that's something. And so I don't know. I don't necessarily hate the ending of this game, but I also think that it's one of the weaker aspects for me is just the ambiguity and undigestible nature of it, right? Where you're just like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah, for sure. It's really, I don't know. I interested to see what they try to do with the timelines, I guess. Generally, I don't like that shit, so we'll just see how it finishes up.
Boy, I tell you, a lot of Wu-Tai at the end of the original game. So I'm excited to see what they do with that portion of the story, the final bit of the story. I really am interested in that and what it holds for the future. You know what I mean? I think that Squeenix is extremely aware of how popular and successful the original game is, and they're gonna try to milk it for everything that they can. So you say it's a trilogy. Is it? Right.
No,
is it a trilogy?
No fucking way. I mean, they will to some extent wrap this up, but they're not going to stop.
Well, I mean, the wheels have already came off, and they in both games have made it very clear that they're going to kind of do whatever they want with it. So could be cool, but there are things at the end of Final Fantasy VII that prevent a lot of characters progressing further. So we'll just say
there's just oh man, there's if I have to follow these fucking mumbling dudes in the third game, like wrap it up. Enough with 100 hours of like Shinra just like stumbling into the ocean and drowning himself, and I'm just like, please make it stop. Also, all side quests shouldn't report to Chadley. I don't like.
It's going to report to Chadley. Chadley is a mainstay, and Chadlina or whatever the fuck what's the female character's name?
I don't remember.
It should be Chadlina. All that shit.
I respect that they leaned into it, but because he's not like a. No one do people like him? Or people are like fucking
somebody's got like a body pillow of Chadley and just sleeps with Chadley.
That's probably a thing.
Fucks Chadley. Speaking of Chadley, what did you think of like the combat? Did you finish all of those?
No. So
there's a lot of them.
And that's something that
There's 20 hours, 100 hours to finish the game, then 20 hours of doing all that shit.
There's I did a lot, but I got to a point the final proto relic, you have to use Aerith and to fight these chocobos, and it's pretty fucking hard. And I looked it up, and it was like you need to have this skill, and it's one of like her level 3 deep into the tree, and I hadn't been working in that direction. So when I found that,
You done fucked up, Nick.
when I found that out, I started to work in the direction, but I never got that.
Mhm.
And I believe
know
it's like
exactly what-
Transcendence or something. I don't remember what it's called, but like
I know exactly what fight you're talking about.
like
at least.
you everyone is like, you really need it. I don't have it. So maybe when I have some time away and before, because I would like to finish that proto relic thing up with that fucking weird dude from Japan, or wherever he is.
Yeah,
It's
he's in Wutai,
uh
which is Japan.
got it. But so yeah, there's that I didn't finish up, and then
You didn't do the proto relic stuff like I told you. You didn't finish you didn't fight. It's not Yoyembo.
that's the last proto relic thing.
Got it.
So I can't proceed until I do that.
Got it. Yeah.
Everything else has been 100%. All the proto relics were done up until that last. And it's literally the last one.
Gilgamesh.
Yeah. So I have not finished that because of that one fucking fight. So I got to look it up, I guess, how to grind her to get her up so I can finish that fucking thing.
Dude, that Gilgamesh fight in Wutai. Oh boy. That shit is hard as fuck. One of the hardest fights in the game for me, aside from some of the like ladder Chadley fights, which are just batshit insane. Mm-hmm. Where it's just like, use fucking Kate Sith for all of this, and it's just like, Kate Sith's the worst.
He's so bad.
Yeah, he's like the Dan Hibiki of Final Fantasy VII. Like, all of his moves are like intentionally bad, and then all of his abilities are like gambling.
He like throws dice, and it's like,
you want to gamble? And it's just like, no, I don't want to gamble.
Yeah.
I do like the little horn that the cat, shoots notes all over the place. It's pretty satisfying.
Yeah, it's just
it's a great character. Yeah, but yeah, for sure, very, very, very good. No, definitely the Gilgamesh fight is one to see. I think it's one of the best fights in the game. It's going to test you significantly, and it's going to require you to do some very specific build crafting, and you're going to have to fucking be ready, because that shit is tough. So,
well, I will maybe go back to it in a little bit.
Love that game. Fucking 10 out of 10 for me. Love it. I respect that you look. This is not like a situation where I'm like, I think that you're fundamentally wrong. Like, all the things that you've talked about, I disagree with you, but I also am like, I get it. Everyone's different. Like, there's just something about like the amount of content here. A large part of it, in my opinion, was good, with some notable exceptions. But overall, I'm just still over the moon for this thing.
Is the next one 100 hours again?
Well, you're gonna have to pad it out, which I expect they will do. But yeah, probably.
Okay. Interesting.
I think it won't be like, this isn't going to be like a fucking Elden Ring Night Rain situation. We sell it for $30 and it's a much more piecemeal, smaller experience. No, this is going to be a big ass fucking game. And I think that it probably releases in 2027 or 2026. And it will be like one of the big,
for sure,
marquee game releases of the year.
Okay. I think that about wraps that up. There was a state of play from Sony, which I'm not really ready to talk about all the games that they announced. There wasn't anything too crazy, but I want to talk about the Housemarque is making I don't know what you want to call it, but it's very clearly a spiritual successor to Returnal. And that makes me very excited, because I fucking love Returnal, and I didn't know what they were going to do. Returnal 2 doesn't quite make sense. It's not as exciting, but the idea that it's just a trailer with no gameplay. It's called Saurus. It's very clearly, you can see like a reflection in his eyes of the fucking orbs coming at him, and I'm like, yes,
bullet hole orbs. Yeah,
I am ready. I'm ready for another one of those, and I think they said next year. So that is very exciting. That's really one of my favorite studios, except I have played Returnal on a PC, and I'm a little bummed that I will play it on with a controller to start.
We'll just stream it to your. Well, I guess you'd have to use analog controls for that too.
Yeah. I don't know it was just there was such a big difference when I played with the mouse and keyboard. It was like, oh, this is a different game. Okay, and that's more because of me because I suck with a controller, but still.
Yeah. Big thing here. Rahul Kohli is the main character in the game. That dude probably deserves to be a main character in a video game just because he's just so into video games and has a podcast, a quite good podcast as well.
Really?
Yeah, you should listen to it if you haven't. He's an interesting character. He's pretty funny, and he also is. He's a good actor, and I also think that depending on how, I mean, if it follows the same trajectory as a Returnal, like it's going to be a pretty limited role for him, in terms of like his acting chops. But I think it's a great casting because it's like, okay, we've got a guy that can act if we need him to, and also he's a fucking video game nerd, so we've got that as well. And yeah, so super stoked for that. I am excited for a Returnal spiritual successor. I would like to see a little bit more meat on the bones in terms of what was on offer with Returnal. I think it was a fantastic launch title for the PS5.
I would like to see different or expanded progression. They add the weapons
Yeah,
you're upgrading, but they didn't have really. There wasn't anything else that you were at as like a proper roguelike. There wasn't anything, and I would like to see something. Some sort of skill-based trees that you're interfacing with.
I think that they probably will do that. You know, I'm sure that it will be some sort of evolution of what we saw in Returnal. We just don't really know. The question is it going to be completely surrounded around a rock band song from the 1970s, like the original one was? Because I think that's a brilliant thing to do with Blue Oyster Cult. Don't Fear the Reaper being like the complete, like, I don't know, in like in a weird way, it was like such a big part of that game, and I thought that was brilliant.
When you go back and play that boss that's at the organ, and you're like, "Are you fucking kidding me?"
Yeah,
like this whole level played it leading up to this thing.
As soon as I like connected the dots with that, I'm a big fan of that song. I don't know how you couldn't be a big fan of that song.
Yeah.
But I just kept on seeing Will Ferrell with his shirt halfway up, like banging a cowbell over and over again. Every single time they would like play like notes from that song. Which
it's great, man.
It's a great skit. If you don't know about more cowbell, you gotta, how could you not? But it's fantastic.
I don't know, maybe we're old.
Everything about that skit is brilliant. Like his shirt, he's like slightly overweight and hairy as fuck.
Jimmy Fallon not together. I mean, he hardly ever had it together on SNL, but he absolutely doesn't have it together during that skit.
And Will Ferrell is just fucking pounding that cowbell above his head. It's so good, dude.
Does Will Ferrell ever break character? Because I don't know how he does the shit that he had done or he did on SNL and not just die.
I don't know. I watched a documentary recently. I can't remember the name of it, but it's one of the writers that he's worked with for a long period of time came out as trans. And the documentary is basically the two of them going on a road trip across the country and like kind of grappling with the fact that she's come out as trans. And it is brilliant, dude. High recommend. It's hilarious. It's really sad and fucked up, but it's also really great. And Will Ferrell is like, I know that it's, a documentary, but like he just seems like a fucking. I want to hang out with Will Ferrell is what I'm saying.
He's ridiculous.
No, he's very funny, but he's also just like super aware and concerned about his friend that's going through like this huge change in their lives, and it's definitely worth a watch.
I'll have to look it up. I have watched an enormous amount of TV since I've been sick. Just one show. I don't watch hardly anything, but I don't know if you've seen Succession. But it's like the billionaire.
It's fantastic. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So I am almost, there's 4 seasons. I'm almost to the 3rd one. That's all I watch. My wife turned to me the other night. She's just like, Secession turned you off video games, huh? Because it's just like,
dude, it's so fucking
it's very,
good.
very fucking good.
You're not gonna believe
Where it goes.
the end of that series. I'm not gonna spoil it, obviously, but it is in my opinion, it is one of the best endings of a TV show. If you are fans of certain characters, which I absolutely was, it is pure gold. So I can't wait to hear.
I'm about a week away from probably finishing it at my current trajectory.
It's so good. Like just all of them are just the
Super
worst. I mean, it's just Fox News, you know, it's the Rupert Murdoch's kids and like that power struggle, but like
just
on crack.
It's an absolute shit show.
The name of the documentary I was talking about is called Will and Harper.
Will and Harper.
Yeah.
Okay.
Highly recommend. You should watch it.
Excellent. Well, we're back. I think that's going to do it. You have anything else to add?
No.
All right. Thanks for listening. Probably come and join the Discord. There should be a link in the show notes or a link in the bio on YouTube. That's Gamescast 148. Thank you guys.